The reward's not so great without the struggle. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Athlete Podcast sponsored by Sports for Champions. Today I'm delighted to be joined by GB tumbling star Fred Teague. How are you today, Fred?
Not too bad, you know.
Thank you very much for joining us. If we could start at the very beginning, how did you first get into gymnastics?
So I was sort of about 4 years old and I was around the house jumping around, doing lots of things on the sofa, and my parents basically told me that I needed to go and get it done properly. So go and learn something so that I didn't injure myself.
Yeah, I see. So it's better with crash mats in the gym than just jumping off the sofa.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. And what age were you when you first went to the club?
So I moved around clubs for a little bit, you know, different recommendations by different coaches, tried trampolining and whatnot. But I eventually ended up at Andover about 10 years old. So
okay, cool. And then were you first you were first doing trampolining. Did you try any of the other disciplines?
Yeah, so I did do acro and artistic at the start, like very briefly, but I wasn't too great at those in a sense, so I'd sort of got recommended to move to tumbling by one of the coaches at the club I was at.
Tumbling is one of the best gymnastic disciplines to watch, in my opinion. Can you tell us a little bit about tumbling, about what kind of strength it takes, what kind of characteristics make a good tumbler?
Yeah, so it's done across a 25 metre long fiberglass rod track, which is, you know, sprung, and it's basically just about building power, building as much, big skills, throwing difficulty in there, as well as tying in like the execution factor of it, so making everything look neat whilst you're doing it. So it's then scored on the difficulty and the execution, and it kind of just takes, it's a lot of it, it's a big mental game. So as much as it is physically, you've got to make sure that you get right the physical and mental factor of it. So
yeah, makes sense. I think with it being such a short run, I'd imagine it's more about muscle memory than anything else.
Yeah, 100%. It's so what we do throughout training is just building that muscle memory so that when it comes to that time, you know exactly what you're doing and you don't almost need to think about anything. It's just, you know, the movements you're doing. You need to make sure that you're ready to hit the track with strong legs.
So you settled at a club at 10 and I believe you started competing at 11?
Yeah, so I started my like competitive side of gymnastics when I was about 11, in the 11 to 12 category. For my first year, wasn't too great. I was just getting used to the sport. So the second year was when I picked up my first medal and really got involved in the competitive side and moving up in the stage.
Are you a competitive person?
Yeah, I'd say I am. I like to be competitive. I think it adds like a fun sort of addition to anything. Like if you make a game out of it, making a winner, and it always makes that there's motivation for someone to do better than someone else.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so how did that work with school? Obviously, you're starting competing just at the time you're transitioning to high school. Was that challenging?
I think it was a little bit. Obviously, I had school within the days and I had to train in the evenings, so quite often I was tired on some cases because it's long days, training hours increasing because I was, getting more into the sport. So you just got to balance that with sort of how you're making sure that you're eating throughout the day and making sure you've got the right energy when you're heading into training.
Definitely. And do you think that it made you like a better person and a better student at that young age?
Yeah, I think so. I think you learn to sort of focus down on things when you really need to. Like you understand like the having fun and sort of making sure you're enjoying what you're doing, but you know that when things need to be done, you can sort of focus and get them done.
When did you first start competing internationally?
I was, I think maybe 12 years old when I had, or 12 or 13 when I had my first international. Just sort of a small like cup in Portugal. So I actually did quite well in that competition, and that was sort of my main drive, as I was like, right, okay, I'm starting to do well internationally, so I might as well just keep going and try and make it to the top.
I think you had a good run right through to 2019 where I think you achieved a bronze, is that right?
It was 2021 where I achieved my bronze.
Okay.
But in 2019 I had my first international at World Championships.
Oh, that's it. Sorry.
So that sort of got me onto the world stage, and then after COVID happened and I had to deal with all that, that was a sort of small setback, but I managed in 2021 to get my first world bronze medal.
Brilliant. How did that feel? Was the competition, where was that?
So that was in Azerbaijan.
Right.
I was an underdog at that competition. I wasn't likely to medal, and I just happened to get my training right in the lead up. You know, I had to deal with some small injuries, so I hadn't even competed the routine that I did in the finals that won me my medal. So it was just I had all the pieces, and I had to put them together on the stage in the moment. So that was quite a big one for me.
Do you think you deal well with pressure?
Yeah, I think a lot of people that do well in the sport love the pressure. They love having that sort of that feeling when you're still at the top of the track, and you know everything relies on the next 15 seconds. So it's a good feeling when it all pays off.
So you had the bronze in 2021 in Azerbaijan, and I think you improved on that the following year. Is that right?
Yeah. So 2022 was my final year as a junior, so I wanted to kind of finish it off well, and sort of make a name for myself as I moved into the senior category. So at Bulgaria in the World Championships, I came second place, which was an improvement on last year. So I was quite happy with that.
That's brilliant. Wow. So yeah, you said, as you said there, that's your final year competing in the juniors. Transitioning into the seniors. Sorry. How do you approach that? Are you changing the way you work out in the gym? Or are you doing anything differently nutritionally?
So obviously training changes a little bit because you've got to start packing in more difficulty because it's going to get a lot harder, and the difficulty caps are removed. So as a junior, there's certain skills that you can't do, and the difficulty that you do in one skill is capped out. So moving into this next year, I was planning bigger sort of ending skills so that I could build up my difficulty. So we're just working on those this year, and then it was kind of an adaptation year, so I wasn't expecting any sort of results or podium finishes in individual. So that was sort of like a building year for me.
Perfect. So yeah, lots of exciting times ahead, I'm sure. Can you tell us a little bit about what a typical day's training looks like?
So I head into my training at about mostly 6 o'clock. We train from 6 until about 8:30. Sometimes in the day, depending on what my plans are for the week. But you know, the warm up just sort of helps me, you know, get my muscles feeling loose and stretching out, making sure that I'm not risking injury by just getting straight into it and pulling muscles or anything. So after that, I'd get on the tumble track, spend maybe 45 minutes there working on some of the things that I need to do to make sure that I'm moving forwards within my training.
Are you doing like a full run each time or just little bits?
Well, it depends. So full runs would like most often come into plan when I'm getting closer to a competition. So within my competition like period is when you start drilling in the full runs. Whereas out of a competitive season, you're just working on your sort of new things and only doing half runs or just working on the ending skill or the start or the middle. So yeah.
Makes sense. Interesting. And then do you take quite a hard approach on nutrition, or are you quite...
Yeah, I think nutrition has to come into, you know, what you're doing. Some people find that it doesn't help, and they just, you know, when it comes to competition, they want to eat what makes them feel good, which sometimes works for people. But I think when it comes to me, I want to make sure that as much as I'm, you know, eating what I want to eat, I make my body feel good, and it then helps my brain feel like, you know what, I should have energy today because I've eaten what's right for me. So eating carbohydrates is, you know, slow release energy, make sure that you're ready for training, rather than eating things that aren't going to necessarily fill me with energy.
Yeah, makes sense. And then in terms of funding, I know that is quite a contentious issue around tumbling. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works and perhaps how Sports for Champions can help?
So funding within my sport, because we're not quite Olympic, we're not involved in the Olympic sort of stage, so we get funded to go to some of our competitions at a senior level, but as a junior you have to pay for competitions, including like accommodation and flights and everything. So Sports for Champions is kind of helping me be able to put money towards, you know, getting around the place and just having time to focus on my training rather than have to fill up my day with a long job or anything.
Makes sense. And then in terms of the future, what kind of legacy would you like to leave behind?
I think when I think about that, I always think about my coach. I think he's left quite a big legacy, as in the fact that he's had such a big career. He's been at the top of the world stage for the majority of his life.
What's your coach's name?
So my coach is Christoph Willerton. He competes alongside of me. He's a big inspiration. So I think he's left a massive legacy behind in the fact that he's inspired so many people. Like, it's brought me to where I am. So I'd kind of want to leave, knowing that I'd inspired some people to push themselves further.
Perfect. And then in terms of future goals, do you set yourself short-term, medium-term, long-term goals, or you kind of go with the flow?
Yeah, definitely. I think like within your head, you sort of understand what you want from the week, what you want from the month, what you want from the year. So it's good to have a sort of point to work towards, even if it's just that step by step going one thing at a time, or whether it's having one point and just making your course to get there.
Perfect. And then would you have any advice for a young person maybe thinking of getting involved in sport, or maybe gymnastics in particular?
I think you just got to do what you enjoy. You got to find the sport that really sort of touches you and makes you want to, I really enjoy coming to training because I just like enjoy the sport in itself. Like, I have fun there rather than picking what other people are doing. I think you just got to find what you enjoy, because it makes it easier to, once you get to that competitive side of it, just keep going because you're doing it because you love it, as well as doing it for the competitive side.
Perfect. I think that's great advice for any young person looking to get started, and also a great note to end it on. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
No worries.
No, you're very welcome, and thank you to everyone watching at home. We'll see you next time.